During an argument, she said, "You really think you're the best I can do?" I replied, "You're probably right." After that, I started working out, got promoted, and turned my life around. 9 months later, when she saw me with someone new, her tearful voicemail said it all. "My name is Daniel. I'm 29 and I work as an IT support specialist for a regional healthcare network. My job is basically solving problems no one else wants to deal with. Broken systems, angry doctors who can't log into software, and servers that decide to crash at the worst possible time. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and I've always been good at it." My girlfriend at the time was Vanessa, 26. We had been together just over 3 years. She worked in event planning for a luxury hotel downtown. Vanessa was the kind of person who thrived on attention. Loud personality, big social circle, always dressed like she expected to run into someone important. At first I liked that about her. I'm naturally quieter and more routine-focused. She brought energy into places I normally avoided. For a while it felt like we balanced each other out. But over time the way she talked to me started changing. At first it was small things. Comments about how my job sounded boring when she told her friends about it, or how some of the guys she worked with were way more ambitious. Always said with a laugh so she could pretend it was a joke. I usually ignored it. Then the comparison started. Vanessa loved comparing people. Whose boyfriend made more money? Whose boyfriend had the better apartment? Whose boyfriend was more successful? It was like she kept a scoreboard in her head. 9 months ago, everything finally snapped. We were out at a bar near her hotel with 2 of her friends. Everyone had been drinking a little, and the conversation turned into one of those annoying relationship debates people have after a few cocktails. Her friend Marissa started bragging about her boyfriend getting promoted at a finance firm. Vanessa rolled her eyes, took a sip of her drink, and looked straight at me with this half-amused smile. Then she said it. "You really think you're the best I can do?" For a second the table went completely quiet. Her friends laughed awkwardly like they expected me to laugh too. Instead I just stood up. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. Vanessa looked confused. "Where are you going?" I looked at her and answered calmly, "You're probably right." Then I put on my jacket and walked out of the bar. I didn't run after leaving the bar. I just walked. The place was on a busy street downtown, so there were people everywhere, taxis pulling up, music leaking out of open doors, the usual Friday night noise. But the moment the door closed behind me, everything felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful exactly. More like something had just clicked into place. Vanessa didn't follow me out. I half expected her to, mostly because she hated looking bad in front of her friends. But when I glanced back through the window a few seconds later, she was still sitting at the table, talking, laughing even, like nothing had happened. I walked 3 blocks before pulling out my phone. Sure enough, the messages started. First one came about 2 minutes later. "Where the hell did you go?" Then another. "Are you seriously leaving like that?" Then the third one. "You're embarrassing yourself." That one actually made me smile a little. Because from Vanessa's perspective, everything was always about appearances. Not feelings. Not respect. Just how things looked to other people. I didn't respond. Instead, I ordered a rideshare and headed back to my apartment. When I got there, the place felt different. Vanessa had basically moved in over the last year. She still technically had her own place with a roommate, but most of her clothes were in my closet and half the bathroom belonged to her. Her makeup bag was on the counter. Her shoes were by the door. Little reminders everywhere. My phone buzzed again while I was standing in the kitchen. Another message. "I can't believe you walked out over a joke." I typed something back, then deleted it, then typed something else, and deleted that too. In the end, I sent just 4 words. "You're probably right." A few seconds later, 3 typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her message came through. What is that supposed to mean? I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked the phone and set it down on the counter. Because the truth was, I didn't fully know yet. But something had shifted that night. For the first time since I started dating Vanessa, I stopped trying to prove I was good enough for her. And once that thought settled in my head, it became very hard to ignore everything else that had been happening for the past 3 years. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. Not because of stress. Honestly, I slept better than I had in weeks. No late argument. No tension hanging in the apartment. Just quiet. My phone showed a bunch of missed messages from Vanessa. Most of them came after midnight. "So you're just ignoring me now? You're acting ridiculous. You owe me an apology for storming out like that." The last one was sent around 1:40 a.m. "If you think I'm going to chase you over this, you're delusional." That message actually helped me decide what to do next. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and looked around the apartment. Vanessa had slowly taken over the place during the past year. Half the closet, bathroom drawers, her shoes lined up by the door. At some point, she'd even replaced my plain kitchen towels with these bright decorative ones she insisted made the place feel more adult. For a long time, I didn't mind. But sitting there that morning, it suddenly felt strange. Like the apartment didn't belong to me anymore. So I started fixing that. I pulled a suitcase out of the closet and began packing her things. Clothes first, then shoes, then the makeup bags from the bathroom. I moved through the apartment calmly, room by room, putting everything that belonged to her into boxes and bags. No anger, no dramatic music moment, just quiet. By late morning, there were 4 boxes and 2 bags sitting by the door. I carried them downstairs one by one and placed them outside the apartment building next to the entry wall where packages usually get delivered. Then I went back upstairs. My phone buzzed again right as I walked into the kitchen. Vanessa. I ignored the call. Instead, I sent one message. Your stuff is outside the building. Please pick it up today. I stared at the screen for a second after sending it. Then I added one more message. You're probably right. You can do better. Good luck. After that, I blocked her number. Then Instagram. Then everything else. The apartment felt quiet again when I put my phone down. For the first time in a long time. It actually felt like my place again. For the next few days, nothing happened. No messages. No emails. No surprise visits at the apartment. Honestly, I expected some kind of explosion. Vanessa had never been the type to accept being ignored. In 3 years together, I'd never once blocked her before, and she hated losing control of a conversation. But the silence stayed. The first real change happened the following Monday. I was back at work when my manager asked if I had a few minutes to talk. Normally, that kind of sentence makes people nervous, but in IT support it usually just means something broke somewhere. This time it wasn't that. Our department had been struggling for months with organization. Too many tickets, not enough people, and constant delays fixing things for the hospital staff. Apparently, the leadership team had been discussing changes. My manager leaned back in his chair and said something that caught me completely off guard. We're creating a new systems coordinator position. I nodded, waiting for the rest. You're the first person we thought of. It wasn't a massive promotion or anything dramatic. But it meant a better salary, more responsibility, and finally moving out of the endless help desk ticket queue. 6 months earlier, I probably would have talked myself out of it. Said I wasn't ready. But that morning something felt different. Yeah, I said, I'd like that. The rest of that week, I started making other changes too. Nothing extreme. Just small things I had ignored for years. I signed up for a gym near my apartment. At first, it was just a way to clear my head after work. But after a couple weeks, the routine stuck. Work, gym, home, repeat. Without Vanessa around, the apartment stayed quiet. No late-night arguments. No sarcastic comments about my job or my clothes or the way I spent my weekends. For the first time in a long time, my life felt simple. Months passed like that. New position at work. Better pay. Better habits. Around month 5, one of my coworkers convinced me to join a small hiking group that met on Saturdays. It wasn't really my thing before, but I figured why not? That's where I met Olivia. And without realizing it, that's when the second part of this story quietly started. I met Olivia on a Saturday morning in a parking lot next to a trailhead about 40 minutes outside the city. It was one of those casual hiking groups where half the people show up for the walk and the other half show up for the coffee afterward. I almost didn't go that day. It had been a long work week, and I considered sleeping in instead. But I went. Olivia was standing near the back of the group when I arrived, tying her hair into a ponytail and laughing about something another hiker had said. She wasn't loud like Vanessa. She didn't try to command attention. But people naturally listened when she spoke. We ended up walking next to each other for most of the hike. Conversation started simple. Work. Favorite places to travel. The usual small talk strangers use when they're figuring out if the other person is interesting enough to keep talking to. She worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation clinic. At one point, she asked how long I'd been in IT. About 5 years, I said. Do you like it? Yeah, actually I do. She smiled. That's rare. Most people complain about their jobs within the first 5 minutes of meeting someone. I laughed. Used to date someone who did that. She tilted her head slightly. Used to? Yeah. That situation ended a few months ago. She didn't ask for details. Just nodded and changed the subject. That small thing stood out to me more than I expected. Vanessa had always wanted every story immediately. Every detail. Every explanation. Olivia just let conversations breathe. After the hike, the group went to a small cafe nearby. We sat at a long table with everyone else, talking about random things while people drank coffee and compared hiking shoes. Before leaving, she pulled out her phone. You coming next Saturday? Probably. Good. I'll see you there then. No pressure. No flirting game. Just a simple assumption we'd talk again. And we did. The next week. Then the week after that. Then eventually we started meeting outside the group. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into longer conversations. By month 8 after the bar incident, Olivia and I were officially dating. Life had quietly moved forward. Better job. Better habits. A relationship that actually felt calm. And honestly, Vanessa hadn't crossed my mind in weeks. Until one evening about 9 months after that night at the bar, when someone suddenly called my name from across a restaurant. Olivia and I were sitting at a small restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy. Just one of those quiet places where the lighting is low and people actually talk instead of staring at their phones. We were halfway through dinner when I heard someone say my name. Not loudly, but clearly enough that I recognized the voice immediately. Daniel? I looked up, and there she was, Vanessa, standing about 10 feet away next to the host's stand, holding a small purse and staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. For a second, neither of us moved. She looked almost exactly the same. Same style, same confident posture, same perfectly styled hair. But her expression was completely different. More shocked than anything else. Then her eyes shifted slightly. From me to Olivia. Olivia noticed the pause and turned in her chair. You know her? She asked quietly. Before I could answer, Vanessa walked closer to the table. Her voice came out tight. Wow, that was it. Just one word. Then she forced a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. Daniel, didn't expect to see you here. I nodded politely. Hey, Vanessa. There was another awkward silence. Her eyes moved back to Olivia again, and I could see the moment the realization hit her. Because 9 months earlier she had asked me a question at a bar. You really think you're the best I can do? Back then she had been looking down at me when she said it. Now she was studying the situation like someone who had just walked into a story they didn't expect. Olivia stayed calm. She extended a hand slightly. Hi, I'm Olivia. Vanessa looked at the hand for a second before shaking it. Vanessa. Then she looked back at me. So, this is what you've been up to. Her tone had that same sharp edge I remembered, like she was trying to regain control of a situation she didn't understand. I kept my voice neutral. Just having dinner. She let out a small laugh. Right. Her eyes moved between us again. Then she said something that sounded half sarcastic. Well, this is interesting. And that's when I noticed something else. Vanessa wasn't just surprised. She looked unsettled. Like the story she had told herself about how things would turn out had suddenly stopped making sense. Vanessa stayed standing next to the table for another few seconds. Long enough that the moment started to feel awkward. Most people would have excused themselves by then. Maybe said hello and walked away. But Vanessa had never been good at walking away from situations where she didn't feel like she was winning. So she stayed. Her eyes moved between Olivia and me again. You look different, she said. It didn't sound like a compliment. More like she was trying to figure something out. Olivia glanced at me. I could tell she was picking up on the tension, but she stayed calm. Different how? I asked. Vanessa shrugged slightly. I don't know. Just different. She paused. Have you been working out? That question made Olivia smile a little. I had. The gym routine I started months ago had actually stuck. Nothing extreme, but enough that I looked noticeably better than I had the last time Vanessa saw me. Yeah, I said. Something like that. Vanessa nodded slowly. Interesting. Then she looked at Olivia again. So how long have you two been? A few months, Olivia answered casually. Vanessa's lips pressed together for a second. Then she let out a small laugh. Wow. Again with the single word. I realized something in that moment. Vanessa wasn't just surprised to see me with someone else. She was surprised I looked happy. Not nervous. Not trying to impress her. Not trying to prove anything. Just sitting there eating dinner with someone who clearly enjoyed being around me. That had never been our dynamic before. She glanced at the table again. So you moved on pretty fast. I shrugged. It's been 9 months. That sentence seemed to hit her harder than I expected. 9 months? Yeah. She nodded slowly again, like she was recalculating something in her head. Then she said something quieter. I didn't think you'd actually change things like that. I tilted my head slightly. What do you mean? Her eyes met mine for a second. I don't know. I thought you were just being dramatic that night. That almost made me laugh. Because for Vanessa, everything had always been a game of reactions. Push someone. See how they respond. Then adjust. But she had misread that moment completely. Before I could say anything else, Olivia gently touched my arm. Hey, she said softly. Your phone's buzzing. I glanced down at the screen, and that's when I noticed something strange. 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number, and then a voicemail notification. Vanessa saw it too, and suddenly her expression changed again. I didn't listen to the voicemail right away. The notification just sat there on my screen while the three of us stood around the table in this weird silence. Vanessa noticed it first. Who's calling you that much? She asked, trying to sound casual. I shrugged and locked the phone. Probably nothing important. Olivia smiled slightly and picked up her glass of water. Vanessa didn't move. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned lightly against the side of our table like she had suddenly decided she was part of the dinner. You seem different, she said again. I raised an eyebrow. You already said that. No, I mean it, she continued. You actually look confident now. The way she said the word confident sounded strange, like it was something she hadn't expected to see. Olivia glanced between us. Should we give you two a minute? She asked politely. Vanessa shook her head quickly. No, it's fine. But then she looked straight at me. I just didn't expect you to actually follow through. Follow through with what? With, all this. She gestured vaguely toward me. The gym, the promotion, the whole self-improvement thing. I hadn't told her about the promotion, but I guess it had reached her somehow through mutual friends or social media. That made me realize something. Vanessa had probably been keeping track of me from a distance. That thought was a little unsettling. Olivia leaned back in her chair calmly. Daniel doesn't seem like the type who makes empty decisions, she said. Vanessa looked at her again, studying her face carefully. Then she let out a quiet breath. You know what's funny? What? I asked. 9 months ago, I asked him a question at a bar. Olivia tilted her head slightly. What question? Vanessa's eyes stayed on me. I asked him if he really thought he was the best I could do. Olivia raised her eyebrows. And Vanessa gave a small, tight smile. And he walked out. Olivia slowly nodded. Honestly, good for him. For the first time that evening, Vanessa didn't have a response ready. She just stood there for a moment. Then her phone buzzed in her purse. She glanced at the screen. Her expression changed again. And a few seconds later, my phone buzzed too. The voicemail notification had turned into a new message. From the same unknown number. Vanessa saw the name pop up on the screen. And suddenly her face went pale. I looked down at the phone again. Same unknown number. But now there was a text message under the voicemail notification. Olivia leaned slightly closer. Everything okay? I nodded, but Vanessa spoke first. Her voice was suddenly tight. You should probably listen to that. I looked up at her. Why? She hesitated. For the first time since walking up to our table, Vanessa looked genuinely nervous. Just trust me, she said quietly. That alone was strange enough to get my attention. So I opened the voicemail. The message started playing through the speaker. At first, all you could hear was breathing. Then Vanessa's voice. Except it clearly wasn't recorded tonight. It sounded emotional. Almost shaky. Daniel, I don't know if this number still works, but I found it in an old contact backup. I needed to say something. Vanessa froze. Olivia looked confused. I kept listening. I saw you tonight. With her. There was a small pause in the recording. And suddenly I understood what I was hearing. This voicemail hadn't been sent today. It had been recorded earlier. Probably after Vanessa left the restaurant. Her voice continued. I didn't think it would hit me like that. Seeing you look happy. Seeing someone else sitting where I used to sit. Across the table, Vanessa closed her eyes. Olivia looked at me quietly, but didn't interrupt. The voicemail kept playing. You remember that night at the bar? When I said you really thought you were the best I could do? Another shaky breath. I thought you'd chase me after that. I thought you'd try harder. That was always the pattern. But you didn't. You just left. I glanced up. Vanessa was staring at the floor now. The voicemail continued. And then over the last 9 months, I kept hearing things about you. The promotion. The gym. People saying you looked better, happier. Her voice cracked slightly. And tonight I finally saw it myself. Another pause. I think I made a mistake. The message ended with one last sentence. I guess you really were the best I could do. The recording stopped. The restaurant noise slowly filled the silence again. And across the table, Vanessa had tears running down her face. The voicemail ended, and the three of us just sat there for a moment. Restaurant noise filled the space around us again. Glasses clinking. Someone laughing at another table. A waiter walking past carrying a tray of drinks. But at our table, everything was quiet. Vanessa wiped her face quickly, clearly realizing she hadn't meant for either of us to hear that message. Olivia looked at me, then back at Vanessa. She didn't look angry. Just calm. Vanessa let out a shaky breath. I wasn't planning on you hearing that, she said. I nodded. I figured. For a second, she looked like she wanted to say something else. Like maybe she had another speech prepared. But whatever words she had ready didn't seem to fit the moment anymore. So she just said the simplest thing. I messed that up. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. Just quiet. I thought you'd always be there, she added after a moment. That sentence sounded honest in a way Vanessa had rarely sounded before. But honesty and timing don't always arrive together. Olivia reached across the table and lightly squeezed my hand. Vanessa noticed the gesture, and I think that's when the reality finally settled in. 9 months earlier, she had asked if I really thought I was the best she could do. Back then, she expected reassurance. Instead, she got silence. And the silence had turned into distance. Distance had turned into change. And change had turned into a completely different life. Vanessa took a slow breath and straightened up. I should go. Neither of us stopped her. She looked at me one last time. Not angry. Not sarcastic. Just tired. Take care of yourself, Daniel. You too, I said. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Olivia watched her leave before looking back at me. You okay? I thought about it for a second. 9 months ago, I had walked out of a bar feeling like I wasn't enough. Now I was sitting across from someone who actually liked who I was. Yeah, I said. I think I am.